The snowstorm had been raging for hours, turning the mountains into a world of white silence. Jake Turner, a cowboy known for his calm nature and strong instincts, pushed his horse through the deep snow. He had heard distant cries earlier, faint but desperate, and something in his chest told him he could not ignore them. The wind howled against his face, freezing his breath. Yet, he kept searching. People in the nearby town said the avalanche had swallowed everything in its path. Jake hoped they were wrong, but the cold feeling in his heart said otherwise. He stopped his horse near the broken pine trees where the snow had slid down violently. The ground looked uneven, as if something, or someone, was beneath the heavy layers. He listened again. At first there was nothing, only the sound of the wind. Then he heard a weak, muffled sound. It was not the wind. It was a cry. A human cry. He jumped off his horse and fell to his knees, brushing the snow away with his bare hands. "Hold on," he whispered into the cold air, even though whoever was under the snow could not hear him. His hands moved fast. The snow was thick, heavy, and cold enough to burn his skin, but he kept going. Every second mattered. The sound grew a little clearer as he dug deeper. He could feel his heartbeat pounding with worry. Someone was alive. Someone needed him. After several minutes, his fingers finally touched fabric wet, cold, and stiff. He dug faster, clearing the snow away until he uncovered a shoulder, then an arm, and eventually a face. His breath stopped. It was a girl. Maybe 19 or 20. Her lashes covered in ice. Her lips pale. But she was breathing. Very weak, but alive. "You're still here," Jake breathed, feeling a rush of relief he had not expected. He placed his gloved hand gently on her cheek, brushing away the snow. She blinked slowly, but her eyes did not fully open. He knew she had only a little time left. The cold was cruel, and she had already spent too long under the snow. Jake carefully lifted her out of the avalanche's grip, supporting her head and back, making sure not to move her too fast. She was shivering uncontrollably, her body stiff from the cold. Jake removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around her tightly. She needed warmth, fast. He carried her to his horse, whispering calm words to keep himself steady. He placed her gently in front of him in the saddle, holding her close to his chest so his body heat could reach her. Her head rested against his shoulder. She felt so light, too light, like she could slip away at any moment. Jake pressed his cheek against the top of her head, hoping she could feel the warmth and strength he was trying to give. "Stay with me," he whispered as he guided his horse back toward his cabin. The snowstorm grew fiercer, but Jake did not slow down. He could feel her shallow breaths against his chest. She was fighting, but she needed help. The town was too far in this weather, so the cabin was the only safe place. After a long, difficult ride, Jake finally reached his log cabin. He kicked the door open with his boot and carried her inside. The fire was dying, but he quickly added more wood, making the flames roar back to life. He laid her on a thick blanket near the fireplace and hurried to warm the room. Her name, he still didn't know it. He knelt beside her and gently checked her breathing. It was there, slow but steady. He rubbed her hands, trying to return life to her frozen fingers. Her skin was cold like ice, and he knew he had to raise her temperature carefully and slowly. After several minutes, the fire grew stronger, filling the cabin with warmth. His coat was still wrapped around her, but he added another thick blanket. He moved with focus but also with softness, as if any rough motion could break her. He poured warm water into a cup and dipped a cloth inside to place against her forehead. Her lashes fluttered slightly. He watched her for a moment, amazed at her strength. Surviving an avalanche was no small thing. He wondered what she had been doing, up in the mountains alone. The sight of her face, now slowly gaining a little color, stirred something deep inside him. A quiet worry mixed with a strange sense of responsibility. He sat beside her and whispered, "You're safe now. I've got you. 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 A soft sound escaped her lips. She was trying to speak. Jake leaned a little closer. Don't force yourself, he said gently. She swallowed weakly. Cold. Her voice barely audible. I know, he replied. You're warming up now. She blinked again, and this time, her eyes opened a little more. They were soft, frightened, but full of life. She tried to lift her hand, but couldn't. Jake held it gently, warming her fingers with his own. You're okay, he said again, reassuring her with his voice. Her lips trembled. Avalanche. I thought. Jake shook his head. You're alive. That's what matters. Her eyes filled with tears, not from sadness but from relief. She felt safe for the first time since the avalanche. Jake stayed beside her, watching over her like a guardian. The fire cracked behind them, filling the room with a comforting glow. Minutes passed, and she slowly began to breathe more steadily. Jake noticed she looked exhausted, but calmer. He didn't want to overwhelm her with questions, but he needed to know a few things. What's your name? He asked softly. She struggled to speak, but finally whispered, Lena. Jake repeated it softly. Lena. The name felt warm on his tongue, gentle and familiar, even though he had never heard it before. I'm Jake, he added, giving her a reassuring smile. She moved her lips again but couldn't form full sentences. She was too tired. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Rest. You're safe. I'll be right here. Her eyes closed. Not in fear, but in trust. She sank deeper into the blankets, letting the warmth and the sound of the fire lull her toward sleep. Jake stayed beside her, refusing to leave her alone even for a moment. Something inside him told him that she needed not only warmth, but the presence of someone who cared. He watched her quietly, thinking about the moment he found her buried under the snow. The way her weak cry had pushed him to dig through the frozen ground. The fear that he might be too late. The relief when he saw she was still breathing. All of it had happened so fast, yet it felt like something that would stay with him forever. Outside, the storm continued to roar, but inside the cabin, there was a different kind of silence, warm, safe, and fragile. Jake added more wood to the fire, and then sat down beside Lena again. He made sure the blankets remained tight around her and gently checked her pulse. It was stronger now. He whispered again, almost to himself. You're still here. The words held more meaning now than when he first said them. They were not just a statement, but a promise. She had survived for a reason. And somehow, Jake felt he was meant to be part of that reason. The night passed slowly, and Jake did not sleep even for a minute. He kept the fire burning and checked on Lena every few moments. Her breathing had grown stronger, but she was still weak. Every time she moved a little or whispered something in her sleep, Jake leaned forward, making sure she was all right. Outside, the storm finally began to settle. The wind no longer attacked the cabin, and the world became calm again. But inside Jake's chest, a different kind of storm was forming. One made of worry and responsibility. By early morning, the warm light of dawn slipped through the cabin window. Jake gently placed more wood in the fire so the room would stay warm when Lena woke up. He prepared warm tea and placed it near the fire to keep it from cooling. Then he sat down on the floor next to her, arms resting on his knees, watching her slowly wake. Lena stirred, her fingers moving first, then her eyes fluttered open. She looked around like someone trying to remember where she was. For a moment, fear flashed across her face. The memory of the avalanche came back to her like a sudden wave. Jake saw the panic and leaned forward quickly. It's okay, he said softly. You're safe. You're in my cabin. I brought you here after I found you. Her eyes moved to his face, studying him with confusion and relief mixed together. You saved me, she whispered, her voice still weak. Jake nodded. Anyone would have tried, he said, though he knew that wasn't exactly true. Most people would have avoided the avalanche area during a storm. But something had pushed him to search. She tried to sit up, but her muscles were stiff. Jake quickly supported her, placing a cushion behind her back. She gave him a thankful look. He offered her the warm tea, holding the cup carefully so her hands wouldn't shake too much. She sipped slowly, closing her eyes as the warmth spread through her body. "Do you remember what happened?" Jake asked gently. She nodded slowly. "My group was hiking. The snow started moving. I tried to run, but..." Her voice cracked, the fear still too fresh. Jake placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "You don't need to tell everything now. You're safe. Take your time." Her eyes softened. She looked around the cabin again, noticing the warm blankets, the fire, the cup of tea, and Jake's tired face. "You stayed awake all night?" she asked quietly. Jake shrugged. "Couldn't leave you alone," he said simply. A small smile touched her lips. It was soft and full of gratitude, something that made Jake's heart feel strangely warm. He looked away for a moment, clearing his throat. After drinking the tea, Lena gathered more strength. She moved her legs slowly under the blanket and sighed with relief when she realized she could still feel them. I thought I wouldn't wake up," she said. Jake shook his head. "You're strong. You fought hard." She looked down at her hands. "I was so scared. I remember calling out, but I didn't think anyone would hear me." "You called," Jake said softly. Her eyes glistened with emotion, but she blinked quickly to hold it back. She wasn't the type who cried easily. Jake could sense that much. She had the quiet strength of someone who had been through difficult things before. A little later, Jake prepared a simple warm breakfast: bread, eggs, and a small piece of smoked meat. He placed the plate in front of her and said, "Eat. You need strength." She nodded and took a bite, her hands still a little shaky. Jake watched her carefully, making sure she didn't struggle. She noticed his attention and smiled a little. "You don't have to watch me like I'm going to disappear." Jake gave a faint smile. "Just making sure you're all right." She finished eating slowly, and color returned to her cheeks. After warming up more, she tried to stand, but her legs wobbled. Jake was beside her instantly, holding her steady without grabbing too tightly. "Easy," he said. "You've been through a lot." She looked up at him, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, the room felt quiet, almost too still. She finally nodded. "I'm okay. Thanks to you." Jake helped her sit near the window where the sunlight fell warmly. She watched the mountains quietly. The world outside looked peaceful again, but she knew how quickly it could change. Jake stood beside her, giving her space but still ready to support her if she needed him. After a few minutes, she asked softly, "Jake, why were you up there in the storm?" Jake shrugged lightly. "Heard something. Maybe instinct. Maybe luck. Hard to say." She looked at him thoughtfully. "If you hadn't been there," Jake interrupted gently. "But I was." That simple sentence carried weight. Lena felt it deeply. As the day passed, Lena recovered more strength. Jake kept checking her temperature and offering her warm drinks. They spoke slowly, sharing small pieces of their lives. He told her he lived alone in the cabin, taking care of his horses and helping out in town when people needed him. She told him she was visiting the mountains for the first time, trying to find some peace after a difficult year in her life. Jake listened carefully. Her voice was soft but steady, her words honest. He respected that. By afternoon, Lena stood outside the cabin with Jake beside her for support. The snow had settled, forming a quiet white blanket across the land. She shivered lightly, not from cold but from remembering what the snow had done. Jake stood close, ready to help. "If you're not ready, we can go back inside," he said. She shook her head. I need to see it. I need to remind myself I survived. Jake nodded. He didn't push her. He just stayed beside her silently. Lena looked at the mountains. The same mountains that had nearly taken her life, but also the same mountains where Jake had found her. She took a deep breath. It's strange, she said softly. I was buried under this same snow, and now I'm standing here. Jake watched her with quiet respect. Lena turned to him, her eyes warm and full of gratitude. I'm alive. Because of you. Jake shook his head gently. You're alive because you didn't give up. I just helped. She smiled, a real smile this time, bright and soft. Still, thank you. I'll never forget what you did. Jake felt a strange warmth inside. He wasn't used to such words. Most people thanked him quickly and moved on. But Lena's gratitude felt different. It felt deep and genuine. She walked slowly toward the horse, holding onto Jake's arm. Do you think we can make it to town? She asked. Jake nodded. The storm's over. It's safe now. But you don't have to rush. You can stay here another night if you want to rest. Lena looked up at him, surprised by the gentle offer. It's no trouble, Jake said. For a moment, they looked at each other in a quiet understanding. She realized he meant it. He wasn't helping her out of duty. He genuinely cared. They returned to the cabin together, and Lena felt lighter than she had in days. The warmth of the fire, the smell of wood, and Jake's steady presence made her feel safe. More than that, it made her feel seen. That night, they shared a long conversation. She told him about her dreams, untarted long tea, no teen help state, and he told her about the silence of the mountains he had learned to love. It was peaceful, calm, and strangely comforting for both of them. As the fire crackled, Lena looked at him and said quietly, Jake, when you pulled me out of the snow, the first thing you said was, You're still here. Why? Jake met her eyes, his voice gentle. Because I meant it. Because I was glad you were alive. And because something in me knew I wasn't supposed to lose you. Lena's breath caught lightly. Not out of fear, but because those words carried sincerity she hadn't heard in a long time. She smiled softly and whispered, I'm glad I'm here too. Outside, the mountains stood silent. Inside the cabin, something warm, quiet, and new had begun, something that neither of them had expected but both of them felt. And for the first time since the avalanche, Lena felt not just alive, but hopeful.